Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at London's love. To the royal Prince Henry, meeting him on the River of Thames at his return from Richmond with a worthy fleet of her citizens on Thursday, the last of May, 1610, with a brief report of the water fight and fireworks. And this is by Anthony Munday, and we're going to find out various things about this. It's not a desperately long text, and we have, as in the room reading along with us, we have got Constantine, we have Eric, we have Tom, we have Desna, we have Liza, and we have Professor Tracey Hill, our resident city chronologer, to help us decode the text. Liza, if I could ask you to start us off by just doing the opening bump from the in bold London's love until I say stop, basically.
London's love to the royal Prince Henry, meeting him on the River of Thames at his return from Richmond, with a worthy fleet of her citizens on Thursday, the last of May, 1610, with a brief report of the water fight and fireworks. London's love to the royal Prince Henry, meeting him on the River of Thames.
It's all right. You've done deja vu. It's exactly the same thing again. I said, just go to the right, honourable.
London, printed by Edward Aldie for Nathaniel Fosbrook, and are to be sold at the West End of Paul's, near to the Bishop of London's Gate, 1610. To the Right Honourable Sir Thomas Campbell, Knight, Lord Mayor of this famous city of London, and to all the aldermen, his worthy brethren, etc., I hold it but right and justice, Honourable Lord, and you the rest of his politic body, to give you that which you have best deserved, to wit, a true taste of that day's solemn triumph in honour of so hopeful a prince, and wherein your great love appeared not a little. Your time for preparation was very short, and mine for your service much shorter. Yet of mine own knowledge, both of them were very royally and gratefully accepted, which I'm sure was all your chiefest expectation, and than which nothing could be more desired by myself, except then your own and me at your continual service.
And there we'll briefly pause. We have a mention to the Right Honourable Sir Thomas Campbell Knight, Lord Mayor of this famous city of London. So I'm assuming that's of the 1609 Lord Mayor's show, of which we have only a fragment of, which is a shame, but we have looked at on the YouTube, and we have in works actually a mini version of that to come onto the podcast. So of course, whether that's come out before this video comes out, I don't know. The chronology of these things is confusing. Tracey, do we know much about the dedicatee of this?
Not particularly interesting. He's kind of typical city oligarch, member of the Ironmongers Company. His son becomes Lord Mayor in 1628. So come generation later, obviously, because these families are all very closely connected. So not desperately interesting, really.
But yes, so this is the person effectively acting as host for the arrival of the royal Prince Henry, meeting him on the River Thames. So, how old is Prince? Do we know how old Prince Henry is at this point? Because he's not got long. Sorry for those hoping for him his lengthy reign as future monarch. I think he's only got another 2 years before he will die. Tragically, I could be wrong on that precise dating, but he's not that far away. So he's a young man, but I don't know how young he is. I think he's in adulthood by now. And yeah, so we're going to get some data on.
He was born in 94, so he's what's that making? 16.
Yeah, so there he is. Okay, let us dance on further into the text then. Constantine, could you take the next chunky paragraph? After you can skip the London's Love recap, which I think we've established by now. Eric, do the paragraph after that. Desna, paragraph after that. And Tom, the paragraph after that, and then I'll see where we go from there.
It hath ever been the nature of this honourable and famous city, matchless for her love and loyalty, in all ages past and present, to come behind none other of the world whatsoever, in duty to her sovereign and care, not only of common good, but also of virtuous and never-dying credit. and such hath always been the indulgent endeavour of our worthy magistrates, from time to time, that would never let slip any good occasion, whereby so main and especial respect might be duly and successfully preserved, and so much the rather because Plato termeth magistry to be the anchor, the head, and soul of any city, and holdeth for the same thing in any commonwealth, as the heart is in the body of a living creature, or a reason in the soul, which being the chief and essential parts of either, the life and existence of the whole is in that power, and the cheerful motion gives courage and alacrity to all the other parts of the body.
Whereof no better exemplary rule can be made than the late apparent testimony of London's love to royal Prince Henry, appointed by our dread sovereign his father to be created Prince of Wales and Earl of Chester, even now in the assembly of the High Court of Parliament, that he might be the 12th prince in that royal creation, succeeding those 11 so long since past.
For our chronicles and records do name but 11 that, since the conquest, were princes of Wales, whereof the first was Edward, son to King Henry III, who afterward was King Edward I. He was created prince at London.
The second was Edward his son, called also afterwards King Edward II, and he had his creation at London likewise.
Thirdly, Edward his son, being after that King Edward III, but he had his creation at York. Desna and Tom, I'll ask you to alternate some of it, because there's a few of these. So Desna, do the fourthly, Tom fifth, and alternate between you.
Fourthly, Edward, surnamed the Black Prince, who was son to King Edward III that conquered France and courted their arms with ours, he was also created at London.
The fifth was King Richard, the second son of that worthy warrior, the Black Prince, who lived not to enjoy the crown. He had his creation in Havering.
The sixth was Henry V, eldest son to King Henry IV, and he had his creation at London.
The seventh was Edward, the son of King Henry VI, whose creation I read to be at Reading.
The eighth was Edward, the son of King Edward IV, afterward called Edward V, never crowned, but made away by his cruel uncle Richard III. He was also created at London.
The ninth was Edward, son to the King Richard III, created at London also.
The 10th was Prince Arthur, son to King Henry VII, who, deceasing, his brother Henry, afterward King Henry VIII, who was made the 11th, was also created Prince of Wales, and both of them at London.
And I'll ask Liza to read the next one.
All these four named princes of Wales were created solemnly by and in the court of Parliament, except three, which were Richard II, Edward V, and Edward the son of Richard III. And those that were created out of Parliament were princes of hard and disaster fortune. For Richard II was deposed, Edward V murdered, and Richard III, his son, died within 3 months after as a just judgment of God for his father's wickedness.
So we'll just briefly pause there. This text is written by Anthony Munday, and you can tell because he's going to go into the history. He's going to do that. And I kind of really hope that he gets a bit of the history wrong and someone writes in and complains, and then he writes an extremely lengthy retraction, which isn't an apology, and he just digs himself deeper and deeper into a hole. But, you know, it's nice and interesting information, and a little bit of moralising there as well, and sort of a little pointing out certain little things. So that was interesting. I don't know if it's very helpful for us in terms of the event itself, but you know, a little backstory. What is a Prince of Wales and how do you find one? Well, there's only been so many in the past. Well, you know, it's a sort of Blue Peter segment. I feel.
Darling in going on as well, isn't there? It's a bit like he basically looked at the Jacobean equivalent of Wikipedia, like, you know, or Googled Princes of Wales history of.
Well, I was thinking more the Ladybird book of Princes of Wales. She's just sitting there cribbing it. Eric.
I do like the idea that he kind of like usually. I mean, Munday isn't the most cheerful guy when he's writing stuff, but he's kind of like, oh yeah, the kid died with 3 months after, just like sort of as a just judgment of God for his father's wickedness. Like, come on, it's just a kid. What has the kid done to Edward? Yeah. And I did enjoy the sort of bit about yes, he is the 12th of that title because he's succeeding 11. Like, it's like sort of circular logic, kind of. There were 11 before him, therefore he's the 12th. I don't know.
Other thoughts before we actually get into something that's maybe helpful to understand this event? I think we've done the throat clearing. Let's get into some actual text. So I will alternate this time between Constantine and Liza for a little bit. So Constantine, if you start us off, but now our Royal Henry.
But now our Royal Henry, coming to be the 12th Prince in this great dignity, and London's Chief Magistrate, the Lord Mayor, with his worthy brethren the Aldermen, having very short and sudden intelligence thereof, after some small consultation, understanding that the Prince was to come from Richmond by water, they determined to meet him in such good manner as the brevity of time would then permit them.
Wherefore, upon Thursday being the last day of May, about 8 of the clock in the morning, all the worshipful companies of the city were ready in their barges upon the water, with their streamers and ensigns gloriously displayed, drums, trumpets, fifes, and other musics attending on them, to await the Lord Mayor and Aldermen's coming.
No sooner had his honour and the rest taken barge, but on they rode with such a cheerful noise of harmony, and so goodly a show in order and equipage, as made the beholders and hearers not meanly delighted, beside a peal of ordnance that welcomed them as they entered on the water.
To beautify so sumptuous a show, and to grace the day with more matter of triumph, it seemed that Neptune smiled thereon auspiciously, and would not suffer so famous a city's affection to go unfurnished of some favour from him, especially because it is the metropolis and chief honour of the island, where to himself ever bears such endeared affection.
For according to the affirmation of Annius de Viterbo, Diodorus Siculus, Hyginus and Pictonius, Neptune being called king or god of the seas, had by his queen Amphitrite diverse children, and as Baal setteth down, each one of them he made king of a several island. Britain, which himself termed to be Insula Beata, he bestowed upon his fourth but best affected son Albion, who, subduing the Samothracians, became sole ruler thereof, according to the testimony of Nicolaus Perotus, Regmanus Philesius, Aristotle, and Humphrey Lloyd, and after his own name called it Albion.
Now, it is not without good reason to be imagined that in mere love to his son's memory, and for his ancient affection to this island, no blessedness at any time can befall it, but it shall receive some especial and regardful note of his favour. But more especially at this time, when heaven, earth, sea, and all had interlaced love together to honour the general rejoicing, for so fair a fortune, so royal a hope, and a prince of so unusual strain or expectation.
For where mortals do consent together and sing as in a choir of settled joy, the supremer powers can never sit as idle spectators, but seeing how weaker strength expresseth itself, they in great bounty must needs add applause unto it, and out of the rich abundance enable their meaner power, by the help, and express also their own liking thereof, by some familiar addition or other.
And there we'll briefly pause. So it's like we started getting useful information, and then he sort of, I mean, all of this is actually useful information, to be fair to Munday. It is setting up the conceit underlying the show that we're about to see. So this information is not, it goes into a little too much detail of, look, I looked at books, Look, like the Bale mentions some of this, so that it's I've checked my sources, but we're actually getting some useful stuff initially. Not quite enough useful stuff. I've got a few questions. So they didn't have much notice that he was on his way, and it's an interesting question about the logistics and how this kind of thing is set up. Where do the barges actually leave from? Because they're going out to meet him, so we know they're out at Richmond, the princes. So the boats are going out to meet him, but where are they leaving from? Do we think? Do we know?
Well, I don't know specifically, but I'd imagine they're leaving obviously city. So 3 cranes is a likelihood. Obviously works very well for large number of barges. They meet him at Chelsea, so yeah, that's probably it. I mean, what would have happened if they would have been, the companies would have been sent a precept from the Lord Mayor basically saying, we've got to put another show, guys. This time it's the Prince. We've got like a week or something. But it wasn't much in the way of pageantry. It's mostly just, barges and musicians and, riffers and that kind of thing. So it wouldn't have been tremendously hard work.
No, because they're digging out the barges that they use for the Lord Mayor's show 5-6 months earlier. There's streamers, ensigns, all the stuff they usually have displayed. Drums, trumpets, fife. So they've quickly sent a note round to the musicians. Can you make sure you can keep us going? Cheerful noise of harmony, a peal of ordnance. So we're getting some cannon going off. And then, as I say, he gets very bogged down in telling us what the theme of the show is going to be about, digging into history, and with that very pathetic line, I love this sort of the testimony of very serious lines, Regimus, Aristotle, and Humphrey Lloyd. It just sort of landed in such a delightful way. I have no idea who that is. We've got sort of details of a little bit of detail about the setting up of the show, and they say they don't have much time, so they're throwing things together quite quickly. Eric,
The bit that got me was that bit about where mortals do consent together and sing as a choir of settled joy. The supreme powers can never sit as idle spectators, but is that about literally God and the weather, or is it more like the prince and his father?
I think it's trying to sort of. I think it's more the former than the latter. I think it's a bit strangled in what it's trying to do. Tom,
just the peal of ordnance. I can imagine how easily is that arranged?
I think it's reasonably straightforward. I think there are systems in place. You've got the Tower of London nearby. They can arrange for guns to be fired. I don't think that's too difficult. And they say they do it for the Lord Mayor's show every year. So they've got a system. And there are other events where they might be firing cannon.
You have cannon set up on Bankside, sort of Lambeth area. They may well have used that because there were armories down there. They would have had probably small cannon and other armaments on some of the ships as well. So it would be coming from the river as well as from the land.
Okay. We're just literally now going to go into some detail which will really actually talk to the show itself. So I'll ask Desna and Eric to alternate this time. So Desna, if you can start us off, let us think of Neptune, which may or may not be important. I think that was the one we left off of. Yes. That's the next paragraph. And then Eric, and then you can just alternate for a little bit. And then we're going to get to some actual speeches. Actual speeches from the shows. Desna.
Wherefore let us think of Neptune, that out of his spacious watery wilderness he then suddenly sent a huge whale and dolphin, and by the power of his commanding trident had seated 2 of his choicest tritons on them, altering their deformed sea shapes, bestowing on them the borrowed bodies of 2 absolute actors, even the very best our instant time can yield, and personating in them the several genii of Corinnia, the beautiful Queen of Cornwall, and Amphion, the father of harmony or music.
In these two well-seeming and richly appointed persons, the Dukedom of Cornwall and the Principality of Wales, by order of Neptune's prophet or poet, call him whether you will, carried some type of figure, or some type or figure, and not improperly to them so applied.
For such representations and mystical understandings have always been reputed lawful, and are evermore allowed to hold and carry correspondency with such solemn shows and triumphs as before in elder antiquity, so likewise in modern and later use.
Let it suffice then that this was Let it suffice then that thus was this goodly fleet of citizens accompanied and ushered the way so far as Chelsea, where, hovering on the water until the prince came, all pleasures that the times interim could afford were plentifully intercoursed, and no disorder or breach of array in the whole navy.
Upon the prince's near approach, way was made for his best and aptest entertainment, which by multitude of boats and barges, of no use but only for desire of sight, was much impeached for a while, till order being taken for the contrary, the prince's barge accosted the Lord Mayor's, where duty entertaining on one side and princely grace most affably accepting on the other, Corinnia, mounted on her whale, presented herself in this manner to his highness.
Corinnia, a very fair and beautiful nymph representing the genius of old Corinnia's queen and the province of Cornwall, suited in her watery habit, yet rich and costly, with a coronet of pearls and cockle shells on her head, saluteth the prince.
And the speech, I'll ask Liza to speak the speech spoken by Corinnia, riding on a whale. We've been waiting for some sort of animal personification, and we have indeed a whale.
Gracious Prince and Great Duke of Cornwall, I, the good angel or genius of Corinnia, queen to Brute's noble companion Corineus, the first of fair Britain's regions, and your own worthy dukedom, in honour of this general rejoicing day, and to express the endeared affections of London's Lord Mayor, his brethren the aldermen, and all these worthy citizens, merchants that do hold commerce with me and the wide world, in our very best and richest commodities, do thus usher them the way to applaud in this triumph, and to let you know their willing readiness by all means possible to love and honour you. The shortness of time hath been no mean bridle to their zealous forwardness, which else would have appeared in more flowing and abundant manner. Nevertheless, out of this little limitation, let me humbly entreat you to accept their boundless love, which is like to Jacob's ladder reaching from earth to heaven, whereon their hourly holy and devout desires, like so many blessed angels, are continually ascending and descending. For their royal sovereign, your father, his queen, your peerless mother, your sacred self, and the rest of their illustrious race, that unpolluted souls may be ever about ye, false hearts or foul hands never to come near ye, but the host of heaven always to defend ye. Here could I wish for such a copious brain and liberal plenty of art as might suffice to declare the royal respect and affability of the prince, not only to my Lord Mayor and his brethren. I think this is narration, not
Yeah, I left it ambiguous because I wasn't quite sure actually which it was supposed to be. I'll take up the cudgels then. Not only to my Lord Mayor and his brethren, but to all the companies in general, spreading his gracious acceptance of their love and kindness, like to the large extending wings of Jove's bird, the eagle, even over them all, and standing in the door of his barge, he suffered no occasion to pass him, but still it took hold of his grace and liking, and thus they set on towards Whitehall, in so soft, mild, and gentle a pace, as the very Thames appeared proud of this gallant burden, swelling her breast to beat them with pomp and majesty, and not one wrinkle appeared in her brow, but as plain and even as the smoothest ivory. Nor dost any rude storm peep forth his head, or the least noise of an ungentle wind stir, but all were wished and still, as forgetful of those uncivil offices, and overcome with admiration of the day's delight. The weather was good, it was all God. Lots of interesting details there. Nice to have riding on a whale. We've been waiting for. We've been starved of personifications of animals. Interesting question as to did they have a whale in stock? I'm trying to think. Did they have one standing by previously? I can't remember. It's been a while since we've done any Lord Mayor shows.
You might have doubled up with a dolphin.
Mm.
No
Well,
actual animals were used.
No.
I think there was a little camel at some point. At least one. Just to say, he's not exaggerating for once about the actors, because Richard Burbage and John Lowen were doing the speeches for this one, so they did get the best.
Oh, right. Oh, good. Lovely. Yes, because we've got the whale and the dolphin coming up, and yes, they do have these sea shapes and two absolute actors. Yes. And yeah, I constantly just circled in this, just going, but what? What do you mean, Anthony Munday? Carried some type or figure and pleasures until the prince came. All pleasures that the times interim could afford. Like what? What are those pleasures? Patently not too much alcohol, because the Navy were not in, did not have any disorder or breach. But, what were they doing in the interim? Details, please. Details. He didn't give us those details. It's very annoying. But yeah, they meet up with his princely grace. The prince's barge accosted the Lord Mayor's. I'm going to say that's poetic license and not that they accidentally bumped into each other or anything. There. Okay, just one for the room. What did Karoulla say? I struggled to follow most of that. Liza was saying it. Anyone who was listening to it, anyone else follow it? I'm not seeing many. Go to Eric and then I'll go to Liza.
A lot of bootlicking and sort of welcome. We don't really have very much time, but hey, we kind of prepared this thing for you. Kind of. I don't know if that's what.
Because it's not in verse. It's all prose. Liza.
Well, I'm sorry if I was. I'm sorry if it was hard to follow. I basically, in the first paragraph, Karoulla says that all the official bodies, the aldermen, the citizens, the merchants, all applaud you and offer their loyalty, their love and honor. And then there's a little excuse for, sorry, this isn't a more elaborate triumph, but we didn't have the time. Then there's an extended metaphor which links the love of Henry's future subjects to Jacob's ladder. Now, you guys know about this. This was a vision that Jacob had in a dream in the Bible. He saw a ladder reaching to heaven and angels going up and down it. So saying that their hourly, holy, and devout desires, like so many blessed angels, are continually ascending and descending. And then saying that we love the entire royal family and we would wish that they have only good people about them, not worse, not bad people.
Yeah, it's that's it. That's the performance. It felt quite opaque. I didn't feel that was as a text designed to carry in the way that sometimes we have.
With the cornea.
Well, perhaps Theon will be better.
Yeah, well, yes, Amphion, we shall find out in a moment. Yes, so I'll ask Desna to alternate with Tom this time. Desna, if you could start and thus, and then Tom being come near Whitehall, back to Desna, and then I'll ask Constantine, can you read Amphion on a dolphin when we get to it?
And thus they set on towards Whitehall, in so soft, mild, and gentle a pace as the very Thames appeared proud of this gallant burden, swelling her breast to bear them with pomp and majesty. Not one wrinkle appeared in her brow, but as plain and even as the smoothest ivory. Nor durst any rude storm peep forth his head, or the least noise of an ungentle wind stir, but all were whist and still, as forgetful of those uncivil offices, and overcome with admiration of the day's delight.
Being come near Whitehall, the barges, according to their quality and degree in order and dignity, divided themselves on either side, to make a spacious passage for the prince and his train between them, even until they came near to the court bridge, the Lord Mayor's barge being then the foremost and nearest. Now the prince being ready to land, Amphion on his dolphin saluted him.
Amphion, a grave and judicious prophet-like personage, attired in his apt habits, every way answerable to his certain profession, with his wreath of seashells on his head and his harp hanging in fair twine before him, personating the genius of Wales, giveth the prince this farewell.
Royal Prince of Wales, in this figure of musical Amphion upon his dolphin, we personate the character of Wales, your principality, who having with my fair sister Coronea thus far tended you on behalf of London's Lord Mayor, his worthy brethren, and his goodly fleet of well-affected citizens, we are all now forced to an unwilling departure. So how our streamers hang the head, as loth to leave you, our barges lag and seem lumpish, as grieving to forgo you. Our trumpets and our musics appear tongueless. The word of farewell is so offensive to them. And except you put spirit into them all, with a gracious acceptance of their love and loyalty, the bosom of fair Thames shrinks, and they fear swallowing. But the sun of true-born majesty shines in your bright eye, and your more serious affairs calling you hence, speaks both your love to them, and liking of the humble duty at their dismission. Home again, their fair fleet, you have brought a royal freight to landing, such a burden as hath made the river not meanly proud to bear. And since we must needs part in our loudest voice of drums, trumpets, and ordnance, be this our last accent. Long live our Prince of Wales, the Royal Henry!
At which very instant off went the chambers, and such a triumphal noise of drums and trumpets as made the very air to echo, which done, they returned back to London again, wherewith we conclude this solemn day's triumph. So yeah, that was a slide I did quite like, actually, Amphion's speech. That was rather good. I love our barges lag and seem lumpish. We're so sad that you're going that we're lumpish and sad. Yeah, there's and you know, and it feels like that's clearly the sound cue. Long live Prince of Wales! Bang, bang, bang! You know, make sure you can that is bellowed correctly and ready to some sort of signal, so that everybody sets off the bangers, as it were. A triumphal noise made the air to echo, so it was loud. Put your pets away for this particular day. Judicious and prophet-like personage, seashells on his head. And on a dolphin. Again, I can't remember if we have a dolphin in stock from previous shows. It's a little patchy, actually, the previous sort of 10 years or so. We've only got a couple. So I don't know if looking at the inventory of what might have been got for Lord Mayor shows, but I would be surprised if there isn't a dolphin somewhere. We must have a dolphin in stock. We'll look into that. There will be a spreadsheet on these things at some point. Eric,
I do remember there are several like island based themes for Lord Mayor shows, and I seem to remember there was a dolphin. I just don't know if it was on the water or out of the water, or all the stuff that like around the time when the Brothers Christmas were around.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we've had a dolphin. I'm sure we've had more than one dolphin. So yeah, they're definitely about. It's just the order of when they were built and how long they lasted for. That's what I'm interested in terms of that kind of thing. Okay, any more friends? Yes, exactly. Okay, let's finish this. There's only a little bit more, but there's some other activity going on, and I'll just sort of send us around the houses a little bit. So I'll start with Eric, then Constantine for Monday, Desna for the evening of the same day, Tom for upon which day, Liza for a Turkish pirate, and then I'll close off. Okay, so yes, upon Sunday, Eric.
Upon the Sunday following, 5 nights of the bath were made by His Majesty in honor of the prince his son, and they all rode in their apt habits with their squires and pages from Durham House to Whitehall, to their no little praise and commendation. Do I keep going?
No.
On the Monday, the king and all the nobility going by water from the court to Westminster, in the court of request, which then was reputed as the Parliament House. The prince had his creation of Prince of Wales, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Chester, and Knight of the most noble order of the Garter, with all the due ceremonies and vestures thereto belonging, His Majesty himself girding on his sword, which being ended, they returned in the like manner to the court again.
In the evening of the same day, it was expected that the water fight and fireworks should have been performed. No mean multitude of people attending to see it. But whether by the violent storm of rain or other appointment of his Majesty, I know not. Albeit Protheus, mounted on a sea monster, had delivered the intent of the device to His Highness, yet was it deferred till the Wednesday following.
Upon which day, after a most royal and sumptuous tilting, the water fight was worthily performed, and by such report as was therefore thereof made to me. Thus it was ordered.
A Turkish pirate prowling on the seas to maintain a Turkish castle, for so their arms and streamers described them both to be, by his spoil and rapine of merchants and other passengers, skulking abroad to find a booty, he descried 2 merchant ships, the one whereof bearing to wind somewhat before her fellow made the pirate waft her to strike sail and come in, which the merchant either not regarding or no way fearing rode still boldly on. The pirate, with drawn weapons and other menaces, wafts her again to veil her bonnet. But the merchant still refusing, the pirate sends a commanding shot, which the merchant answered again, encouraged thereto by her fellow merchant, who by this time was come near her, and spake in like language with her to the pirate. Where he perceived his hope defeated, and this bold resistance returned, he sent shot upon shot very fiercely, whereto they replied as resolvedly, so that between them grew a very fierce and dangerous fight, wherein the merchants, waxing to be somewhat distressed by reason that the castle likewise often played upon them, 2 men of war happening then to be near made in to help and relieve their hard detriment.
And now the fight grew on all sides to be fierce indeed, and the castle assisting the pirate very hotly, and the other withstanding bravely and courageously, divers men appearing on either side to be slain and hurled over into the sea, as in such adventures it often comes to pass, where such sharp assaults are used indeed. In conclusion, the merchants and men of war, after a long and well-fought skirmish, proved too strong for the pirate. They spoiled both him and blew up the castle, ending the whole battery with very rare and admirable fireworks, as also a peal of chambers. Well, isn't that exciting? Yeah, they have a pirate battle, and the merchants fight the pirates, and then they blow up the castle. And knowing health and safety regimens in the early modern period, I'm fully expecting that this will go terribly, terribly wrong and terribly. But I'm just burying the lead earlier when they're saying about they were meant to do it earlier, but we're not sure if it was the weather or something, but they pull it off. Protheus mounted on a sea monster and delivered the intent of the device to His Highness. Sorry, what? How was this sea monster done? Where did that? When did that? What happened there? I am curious. Thoughts?
He actually did some really interesting scholarship about this and similar events. If you're interested in knowing a bit more about it, Maria Schmiegel's written some good stuff on it. There was a few of them, these kind of water triumphs / mock fights things. They were clearly very popular.
Mm. And also there's that little bit, when the merchants waxing to be somewhat distressed by reason that the castle likewise often played upon them. This sense of the battle has flow. It's not like you just turn up and you win. You turn up, oh no, they're a really hard opponent. Oh no, we will fight them back. It's got a story to it. It's got a narrative, and this isn't. You've got stuntmen throwing themselves into the water. I wouldn't want to be throwing myself into the water.
Especially not the Thames.
Well, no. This is really interesting stuff. So I'm really curious about how you do that. It's a really interesting little event. Most importantly, of course, the prince actually gets invested as Prince of Wales. This is what this is all in aid of. This is all a little bit of, to introduce in part this noble chap into the city and to be seen and to be about Constantine.
I'm fascinated with the imagery and the mythology and why Proteus. I know Proteus is supposed to be the old man in the sea and he can change shape, but it's just, I can understand the sea theme, but just the other imagery is interesting.
Mm. And there's interesting questions also about the what we're seeing here with Turkish pirates. There are definitely some issues there, but I think we could unpick another point because that's an interesting question. I wonder whether there's an additional element there. Of course, this is between traders. This is between merchants who maybe have encountered such things and may have an agenda there that this text is setting out. And certainly that's something to look at in the future. Tom.
Yeah, the river would be a large and spacious canvas for them to enact upon. But in saying that, are these actions by professional actors, or are they purely the various houses saying, oh, we'll take this role, you take that role, or are they professionals?
Tracey just said that certainly the speaking roles that we've had were by professionals, and this is under very much the auspices of the city organising this particular event. Though of course anything that's going on specifically for the tilts and the entertainments for the prince himself, that will be done by the royal household, I assume. I don't know precisely who organised the actual water event. That's an interesting question as to who's organising that, because that might be something somewhere in between. And in terms of the performers in that water show, can we even just? Maybe they are professionals. Maybe they're jugglers and acrobats, and who are there for that purpose. They might just be sailors. If you're going to have to fall into the river, you probably want someone who has some idea how to deal with that. I genuinely don't know, and it's a really good question about how something like that. I say all the stuff on the water, the speech on the dolphin, all of the pageantry goes with that is stuff that the City of London does all the time, the livery companies do all the time. The water show, elements of that goes into Lord Mayor's shows, but whether that specific thing is organised there, I don't know how the organisation of that works. Constantine.
Too bad Tracey left.
Yes, it's exactly the moment we really needed to answer the question.
Are there any other instances of this type of ceremony, of water fights or any water?
We definitely have we definitely have water pageantry for the Lord Mayor's show. At the beginning of the day, they will head down to the river. They leave the Guildhall, they process down to the river, and then stuff often happens on the river. So you will have water cannons between different islands and things, and there'll be speeches there, and then they'll travel up to get dobbed in, and then the rest of the pageants happen along Cheapside. But even the water pageants often get put back on land and sort of continue their action. So something like that happens. Whether this is a recycled thing, because the problem is we don't have that many Lord Mayor shows from the 10 years prior to this. We have a bit of 1609 and we've got 1605. But otherwise, that sort of, we've got a bit of a dead patch in terms of texts. Now, that doesn't mean we might have records of stuff. We might know how much they spent on it and things, but that again is something to dig into in terms of those logistics. Because I say, I'm sure the dolphin and I'm sure the whale are stock. They won't have had time to make those. I don't believe it.
No real animals were used and none were harmed.
Yes, this time. No fish were thrown into the audience this time. Okay, any other thoughts before I close on this text? No. Well, that's it then for London's Love. All that remains to thank the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.